So I am the Mid-Atlantic Regional Coordinator for the East Coast Greenway Alliance, and I'm based in Philadelphia. It's me on the Torrey C. Brown NCR Rail Trail north of Baltimore. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter. Really excited to work in this corridor. It's where I grew up, kind of traversing I-95, Amtrak, Megabus, Bolt Bus. So it's cool to see it on the ground and actually see what it looks like to walk and bike and help create that opportunity to other folks. So getting into the trail segments. Next slide, please. A lot of trails are on the ground in the region, which is really great. The solid lines you can see are completed. The dotted are where we have some gaps that we're working on. So in the Philadelphia region, greater Philly area in the Northeast there, you have two trails actually on either side of the Delaware River coming from Trenton down to Philadelphia. And we actually had some great momentum on the New Jersey side recently. There's about 5 miles of trail built just south of Bordentown, in the Roebling area, Crystal Park. So if folks are in that area familiar with that, they should definitely go check that out. It's exciting to see sort of both sides of the river, almost friendly competition, lead to more trails getting built. And in that region, it's part of the greater Circuit Trails network. And that expands with connections down to Delaware. Again, more solid lines down there. Both Pennsylvania and Delaware have about 25 miles each of trail on the ground. Pennsylvania is nearing 50%. Delaware is it's a quicker route across the state. So they're actually around 2/3. We're hoping that to push them to be the first state to complete the Greenway, true to their namesake. The Jack Markel Trail is a really incredible trail that just opened up a couple years ago over wetlands just south of Wilmington. Definitely recommend folks checking out that. It's also really close to the Amtrak station, easy walk from downtown Wilmington. There's a little bit of a gap in Northeast Maryland. It's a bit more rural there. The conditions are definitely tougher. Folks know the topography gets really hilly, but there's a lot of momentum on the ground to get some trails in planning. We're working with local county government, planning offices, but also a lot of advocates in the area who enjoy biking, some of which, are excited to bike, but only on trails. They don't want to be on roads with cars. So, we're trying to present this as not just an opportunity for recreation, but a way to, bring people into these downtowns of a lot of these small towns like Havre de Grace there on the Susquehanna River. Gorgeous town, but a lot of people pass by it on 95. With a trail, you're going to stop in and get lunch. So we want these, again, the trails are connecting people into these places. And then you can see the rest of Maryland actually is doing really well, from Baltimore through Annapolis to DC. This is mega region that's had a lot of momentum recently. The state as a whole is around 40% complete, but this is closer to 50%. You can see some of those long trails like the B&A number 16 there, an old railroad corridor converted to a rail trail. There's a number of river trails that we'll get into. Really, we're trying to get over and under a lot of the built environment. These are areas that are heavily populated, so you have a lot of the beltways and railroad corridors, industrial properties. So it's like Niall said, it's there's not one playbook, so it's just really working with the local planners, advocates on the ground, and especially connecting them across jurisdictions. So in DC, you can see there's also two trails coming in DC is really well outfitted with trails, the Anacostia River and the Met Branch Trail coming into the city there through the National Mall and down to the Mount Vernon Trail into Virginia. So they're also getting close to being finished, which is super exciting. Next slide, please. So we've got a number of trails that just came online this year. You can see all of these are actually along waterways, which is kind of cool. And I think when folks ask about, well, where are these trails getting built or how does it get built? A lot of them think of rails to trails, which is very true. There's a lot of railroad corridors that have been converted to trails, or even having active railroad corridors with trails next to them. But in a lot of places, it's also along waterways. So in the city of Philadelphia, both the Delaware River on the northeast side of the city and the Cobbs Creek on the southwest side of the city form the borders of the city and have trails being built in phases along them. And there are two new segments that were completed this year. Penn Treaty Park in Northeast Philly, or actually Fishtown, Greater Center City, and then Cobbs Creek on the southwest side of the city. The Jones Falls is another one of these. That's what's in the picture there. Gorgeous new segment of trail in the northern part of the city, approaching the city limits, getting close to Baltimore County to the north. This is a beautiful boardwalk. There's a bridge over a highway that's less than pleasant to cross at grade, so it gives nice, easy passage over top of it. We're trying to, advocate these as not only, a way to get out into the nature that's around folks, but also a way to get to work, a way to, take your bike or, go for a walk on the shorter trips so that you have more options and you don't have to get into your car for every trip that you're taking. And then in DC, you can see Peace Street Cycle Track. Doesn't sound like a trail, but really we are advocating for separated bicycle facilities. So these bike lanes that have, a physical divider between traffic and where you're able to bike. So it's more family friendly. All ages and abilities can use that, and being next to a sidewalk as well. So folks can also, walk and jog on that at the same time. So that's getting into areas where we have more constrained environments, and we use road right of way. So railroads, waterways, but also roads are all fair game for trying to find, any passage we can to create safe travel and recreation for folks. Next slide. So I wanted to follow up with the Jones Falls Trail that you saw the photo on. This is kind of where it lands in the greater Maryland, greater Baltimore region, that it's, a part of so many of these trails that are coming together that are locally known, but over time, as they get connected together along the East Coast Greenway, become part of this longer connected network. So we have 2 miles that were added this year to the Jones Falls. That's phase 5. That is many years in the making, multiple decades. So tribute to, the advocates before me in Baltimore City, in City of Baltimore, with Bike More, Rails to Trails Conservancy, but a lot of East Coast Greenway ambassadors and advocates before me as well, working with the City of Baltimore to get funding for that. Federal funding was instrumental in getting a lot of that built, and it follows the Jones Falls down into the inner harbor of downtown Baltimore, connecting, the spine of a greater network that they have, the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network, that they're working on. A great study came out recently, actually, about the economic benefits of connecting these trails through neighborhoods of all socioeconomic levels, really stitching together, basically neighborhood to neighborhood across barriers like highways and, these former infrastructure pieces that have divided people for a long time. So that's a really important part of all of this work. And then zooming out a little bit, Baltimore is almost complete, but you can see just north and just south of it, there are some major gaps. So having that segment of trail really adds momentum and sort of motivation to the counties that surround to get those gaps completed up to the rail trail to the north, which actually continues further to Pennsylvania and York. But we head east to Delaware, but also going south to BWI, the airport, which actually has a loop of trail. We just hit one part of it. So all of those actually have some trails in planning, in some stage of planning. There's actually new funding that was awarded in the last year to the gaps between the Middle Branch and the BWI. So look for more news around that. The South Shore Trail, if you go further south, is part of this leg down to Annapolis. That just got awarded funding for phase 2. That's an old rail corridor, a beautiful segment of trail. It's in development. And then getting down to DC, again, you have that beltway around, but the Anacostia River tributary trails are well known, and there's a lot of momentum in Prince George's County to really push on these connections. There's a number that can connect a set of metro stations to the trails. So again, that they're transportation, and recreation. And finally, those 3 acronyms in that last bullet, these are, this is just the line for the East Coast Greenway, but what you don't see are the greater network, the spider webs, the Baltimore Greenway Trails Network, the Anne Arundel Trail Network in Annapolis region, and then the Capitol Trails Coalitions Network in the DC region. So we are a part of a much larger sort of network, and we're really hoping that can anchor it and add more momentum, add more weight to all the advocates that are either along our corridor or a couple miles out. That it's all kind of coming together as part of this Greenway effort.